This is a 2016 Porsche 911R. The original base price of this car just last year was around $185,000, but this car has proven to be maybe the greatest investment in automotive history, as they're trading on the secondhand market for around $500,000, $500,000, and some have reportedly sold for even more than that in just 1 year. Today, I'm going to find out if it's worth it. Now, I've borrowed this 911R through a client of my friends at Platinum Motor Cars, an excellent dealer here in the Detroit area with an amazing inventory of exotic and unusual cars. You can check them out in the link below. Right now, I'm going to show you around this thing. I'll start with a little overview. The 911R is special for a few reasons, but the biggest are these. Number one, the 911R has the 500 horsepower 4-liter flat-six engine from the ultra-high performance 911 GT3 RS. But the R is free from all the crazy GT3 RS adornments, like the big wing and the giant aero effects. Just the clean, classic Porsche 911 look with that big engine. Number two, it's a stick shift. The market has loved manuals lately, as they symbolize a connection with the car you just can't get with an automatic. But Porsche has been going away from the manual until this car. And number three, this car is limited to just 991 units worldwide, making it rarer than the GT3 or the GT3 RS. Between the manual transmission and the classic styling, it's the optimal Porsche for the purists, but that production number ensured that most purists could never even get one. With that out of the way, I'm going to give you a tour of this thing. Now, this car isn't as weird and quirky as some of the cars I review, but it is really cool. Let me show you what I mean. We'll start on the outside, where the casual observer would probably say that this car looks pretty identical to a regular 911. And in fact, they're not wrong. These cars share a lot of components. For example, the windshield and windshield wipers are the same, and all the other windows. The doors are the same, the door handles, the headlights, the rear bumper looks pretty similar. And of course, the overall shape is almost identical to that of a normal 911. I actually think that's one of the coolest things about this car. It bucks the new exotic car trend of going so showy and ostentatious and in your face, and instead this car is restrained and understated and cool. Nonetheless, there are a few tricks that enthusiasts can use to tell apart a 911R from a regular 911 from the outside if you see one on the street. One of those tricks is pretty simple: the colors. Most 911s don't come with stripes, but the 911R was only offered in white or silver with green or red stripes. That should be easy enough, except that if you had a lot of money, you could pay Porsche to do just about anything. So while most 911Rs will be in this color or fairly similar ones, that isn't a surefire way to tell it apart. Another difference is the wheels. These aren't your standard 911 wheels with your standard spokes and your standard lug nuts. These are center lock wheels with one really tight lock in the middle instead of several lug nuts. They're designed for racing, so you can get them off quickly in the pits. Although they require so much force and a special tool to take them off, good luck removing your wheel on the side of the road if you have a flat tire. To me, the most obvious thing that distinguishes the 911R from a regular 911 on the exterior is the front bumper. Although the 911R doesn't adopt any of the GT3 RS's crazy rear wing aero stuff or all the weird holes on the side of the car, it does share the GT3 RS's front bumper, which is very distinct from the regular bumper in a regular 911. Fortunately, it doesn't have the GT3 RS's super low front lip that scrapes on just about every bump in the road. With that said, if you do find the 911R a little bit too low to clear an obstacle, this car is equipped with the best front axle lifting system I've ever seen. Now, a lot of Ferraris, Lamborghinis, that sort of thing have front axle lifters, but they always take forever to actually lift the front of the car. It doesn't sound like it would be such a problem, but in practice it is. If you're driving along, you don't want to wait 30 seconds with cars piling up behind you while you lift the front of your car to go over a bump. In this thing, I push the button and I'm up. It's amazing how quick this is. And when I wanted to go down, push the button again, and I'm down. Interestingly, my favorite thing about the front axle lifting system has nothing to do with the system itself, but rather the diagram shown inside the gauge cluster when you push it. Look at that thing. Isn't that cool? It's like an old 911. It looks like a 993 GT2 or something. It's heritage. Since I'm discussing the GT3 RS, let's talk about those goofy rear styling aero bits that I keep alluding to. This car loses all of that stuff, so what's the effect of all that? Well, I'm sure it doesn't quite make as much downforce as the GT3 RS, which means it probably can't go through corners quite as fast. However, losing all that stuff means this car sheds 110 pounds. So this, not the GT3 RS, is the lightest member of the 911 family, even lighter than the lightweight GT3 RS. Also, all that stuff creates a lot of drag. This car is more slippery, and that means the car has a higher top speed than the GT3 RS. This thing will do 201 miles an hour. While I'm back here, one little detail I'd like to point out about many new Porsche models. Remember in the past when you could open the hood of a 911 and see all of its guts crammed back there and it was so cool? Well, let me open the hood now. Not anymore. The engine is off limits to you. Another one of my favorite exterior quirks on this car is the front emblem. This isn't one of those metal emblems badges that you see on other 911s or frankly every other car. Instead, this badge is a decal in order to save weight. It's kind of a gimmick. I'm sure they don't actually save that much weight, but it is pretty charming. Inside this car, the thing that I like most is it's this great mixture of lightweight stuff from the GT3 RS and luxury stuff and high quality materials in a regular 911 that you actually want. In fact, if I were to spec out my dream 911, I think it would be almost exactly this combination of lightweight and high quality materials. It's almost perfect. For example, this car has these lightweight cloth door pulls like the GT3 RS. They're kind of gimmicky, but I have to admit they're also kind of cool. And more importantly, they aren't just stuck on some lightweight door with no features that's kind of weird looking. Instead, the door is leather with nice hand stitching. It's a pretty attractive combination, if you ask me. Next up, let's talk seats. This car is equipped with these lightweight carbon fiber bucket seats. They really hug you and they make it a little bit hard to get in and out. If I could, I would dial them down just a little bit. It's probably the one thing I would change about the interior of this car. What I wouldn't change is the pattern on the seats themselves. It's not this annoying lightweight material that makes your back hurt. Instead, it's this cool houndstooth pattern that harkens back to the 911s of the old days. It's really a neat look. More aggressive weight saving in the interior comes in the form of carbon fiber everywhere, which admittedly is a very cool look, and also the fact that the rear seats have been removed, but who really needed those anyway? Now at this point you might be thinking, oh well, it's getting a little bit too weight savvy for my tastes, but don't forget this car has beautiful contrast stitching throughout the interior. It also has an infotainment system with navigation and automatic climate control. Like I said, it's the perfect combination. And of course, lest you forget that you're driving an especially monstrous 911 because you don't have the rear wing on the back from the GT3 RS to remind you, there is a little badge on the dashboard that tells you you're in a 911R, and it even tells you which one you're in case you have several. Also, there is one other reminder, the TAC goes to 10. You don't get that in any other 911. Mostly though, the interior of this car is just like every other 911, well built, well put together, and really, really functional. For example, see that headlight switch? No learning curve there. Same goes for the self-explanatory power window switches and the mirror controls. The dome light works exactly as you'd expect with no trickery, and the sun visors not only have mirrors, but they're lighted. And then there's that famous Porsche Cup Holder. Open this thing up, pull out the cup holder, and then close it right up again. That's the Germans doing what they do best, overcomplicating things. And now it's time to do something I have wanted to do ever since I first heard about the 911R. I'm going to take it for a drive. For more of my thoughts on the 911R experience and the 911R market situation, click the link below to go to autotrader.com/oversteer, where I've also compiled a list of the most expensive Porsche models currently listed for sale on AutoTrader. All right, driving the 911R. This is a little nerve-wracking. This might be the most valuable car I've ever done based on the current market value. The seat is very tight. It really hugs you. I've got the mic pack in my pocket and I had to take it out because it's too tight. It's kind of weird. When you look down, this feels like a regular 991 911, which I'm used to driving. I've been in a million times. But then you press the accelerator and it moves a lot faster and it sounds a lot better. Like all Porsches, it's just so precise. You can just kind of point it where you want it to go, and the handling is so direct. The steering is so direct. It is so tremendously precise. And that downshift, and that downshift. It's so easy to do. The thing I love about Porsches is the gear selector clutch situation is always just so perfect. This car is just so it just feels so intuitive. You know how like a good electronic is intuitive, like a phone or whatever? This car has an intuitive driving experience. You know exactly what you need to press exactly how hard you need to press it, whatever, and I've only been driving this thing for 3 minutes. The thing I love most about this car, especially when I'm driving it, it looks and feels like a regular 911, even sort of like a classic 911, but it has GT3 RS power. For those of us who are kind of offended by the ridiculousness of the styling of the GT3 RS, with all the wing and all the winglets and the little air intakes, for those of us who are a little offended by how over the top that car is, this one is the perfect combination of the performance of that car without any of the stupid stuff that probably is functional, but it doesn't necessarily mean I want to drive around looking like that. Going dead straight on the road, car is beautifully flat, very little intrusion, no wind noise, very little tire noise. In that sense, it just feels like a 911, which is of course a great thing, like a nice luxury car built in Germany, solid. But now we're on some great back roads, and this is where this car really comes alive. The engine note is so good. If there's any question, are you in just a normal 911? You hear that, and the answer is absolutely not. The shifter action is amazing, and this car just has so much power. You know, I'm used to being in a GT3 RS and I'm not shifting. You're not used to having this much power in a manual 911 without it being a turbo, and obviously they don't even do the turbo with a manual anymore. So this is the most powerful 911 where you're shifting the gears yourself. It actually kind of takes some getting used to if you spend a lot of time in 911. Car is so sweet. The gear lever is just so precise. Everywhere you put it, it's perfect. And there is no play when you're in gear. I just feel like I could put this through corners at any speed. This doesn't drive dramatically different from GT3 RS, except it's a little bit more comfortable. But the big difference is I'm controlling the gears myself. And I don't have this look at me styling. Those two things alone are hugely important to me. I get all that power without any of the weirdness, and I get to do this. In a lot of senses, a person could argue that this is the perfect car. You get the classic, beautiful 911 look, but you get the GT3 RS powertrain. You get the luxury that you'd expect from a 911, and surprisingly enough, the ride quality, and you get the manual shifter too. I mean, there's a reason these things are so freaking valuable. So the Porsche 911R is pretty amazing. In fact, it is the single best Porsche 911 I've ever driven. Ever, without qualifiers, the single best I've ever driven. I also hate cars that are so showy and over-styled, so I prefer the 911R's classic look to the GT3 RS's crazy wings and all that stuff, no matter how functional they may be. But folks, this isn't a $500,000 car. For one thing, too many units were made to sustain that price point. And in addition, while I like the styling, most people who spend $500,000 for a car want something with a completely unique look, like the Ford GT or the Carrera GT, and not a car that shares a lot of components with a $90,000 car. In addition to that, the 911R's special manual transmission won't be all that special soon, as Porsche says they're going to bring it back for the next generation GT3. With all that said, I'm going to remind you of something I just said. This is the best 911 I've ever driven, and I suspect this will always be considered a special car. And I strongly suspect this will always be a very, very expensive car. And now it's time for the Doug score. Starting with the weekend categories and styling, the 911R is beautiful. The classic 911 look plus a few special touches, it earns an 8 out of 10. For acceleration, the 911R does 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds, earning in an 8 out of 10. Handling is up there with the absolute best, but it falls just short of perfect as its steering rack isn't quite as precise as some of the very best exotics. 9 out of 10. The cool factor is really strong. Among car enthusiasts, it's an obvious 10, but the general public just thinks you're in a 911, which is a drawback to some people, especially at this price point. So it gets an 8 out of 10. Finally, importance. This is a special car for Porsche, and it always will be. Right now, it gets a 9 out of 10, though this number could drop if Porsche dilutes the R by making the manual more common, and I must admit, I hope they will. Total them up, and the weekend score is 42 out of 50, tying it for first place among enthusiast cars. No surprise at all. In the daily categories, starting with features, the 911R does well. It has some nice modern gadgets, but given its purpose, it's no surprise it doesn't have the automatic beeping, lane departure, radar guided whatever, so it only earns a 6 out of 10. Luxury measures comfort and smoothness, and this car isn't designed for that stuff. It's not punishing, but it's below average, earning a 4 out of 10. Quality, however, is obvious. The 911R's interior is made of top quality materials, and Porsche is notoriously reliable. However, high long-term repair costs prevent a perfect score, so it gets a 9 out of 10. Practicality. Trunk space is a mere 4.7 cubic feet, and this car doesn't have back seats to raise that score, so it earns a 2 out of 10. Finally, we come to value. At the original MSRP of $165,000, I'd give it a high score, maybe even a 10, but at $500,000, this car is overhyped and overinflated. It's still an amazing car, so it's not going to get a 1, but my advice to potential buyers is wait for the hype to die down. It gets just a 3 out of 10, bringing its total daily score to 24 out of 50. Not very good. That makes sense. It's not a car you'd want to daily drive. It's impractical, it's a bit harsh, and it's really expensive. Add it all up, and the total Doug score is 66 out of 100. It does well, but it's a little too compromised and way too expensive to make it to the top.